If you've looked at home gym stuff at all lately, you can't help but notice that Rep Fitness has a top offering in almost every category. And that didn't used to be the case. Rep wasn't always in the top 3 or 5 choices regardless of what you looked at. But what Rep has always been a top choice for is weight benches, especially benches priced and made for the garage gym owner. So when Rep recently revamped its entire line of products, including their benches, I was pretty excited to take a look. Now, I've had a Rep bench in my garage gym, I looked back, for almost 7 years. I started with their AB3000, moved up to their AB3100, then bought their AB5200. Now I've got their AB5200 2.0, and behind me I've got their Blackwing. Needless to say, I'm a pretty big fan of Rep benches. So that means one of the biggest questions I get lately is, okay, Tim, I took your advice the first time and I bought one of those original benches. Is it worth it to upgrade to one of the new ones? Hey everybody, it's Tim from GymCrafter.com, back at you with another video, and today I've got one that's been requested quite a few times. I'd say probably once a week I get an email from somebody asking me if it's worthwhile to upgrade a particular piece of gear. Number one with a bullet lately is, should I upgrade from the Rep AB5200 1.0 to the 2.0. So really want to compare these in detail today, show you all of the differences, but let's take a look at these two benches, how they stack up. We're going to go from top to bottom, end to end, front to back. I'm going to show you every difference I possibly can so that hopefully you can make an educated purchase decision of whether or not to buy one of these used, whether to sell yours, and whether or not this new 5200 2.0 is worth it. So let's come and take a closer look. All right, so while I've got these standing up and sideways, let's take a look at a couple of things real quick. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice is when you look at the 5200 1.0, if you'll notice all of the hardware that's visible all the way up and down the bench, and you'll notice on the 5200 2.0, you don't see that. It's much more discreet. There's a lot more recessed bolt heads. There's a lot more color matched hardware. And I think the difference is that on this, they kind of just designed it as a basic bench, and to save costs, they just kind of bolted everything together. And you're going to see that throughout, where some of the things in the 5200 are integrated, where some of the things on the 5200 1.0 are kind of bolted on. And not only are they different functionally because of that, but just the looks and aesthetics, in my opinion, when you look at the 5200 version 2.0 and you look at things like this recessed bolt here that holds on the handle versus this that just kind of sticks out, there's a lot more thought and design into the aesthetics of the gear. You're also seeing that the 2.0 has different color rails available. And this is true both on the foot and on the bottom here, whereas the 1.0, you had a color choice of this or this. So aesthetic-wise, you're going to have a nicer looking bench in the 2.0. Now, nicer looking doesn't mean that it works nicer, but when you're spending this much money on a bench, it is nice to have it look as nice as possible. Now you notice that the height is just about the same. The 1.0 stands just a bit taller, and I think that's because, I don't think it's really longer, but I think that's because of a couple things that I'll show you in a second. I think the seat gap is bigger on this, and then the way it stands up is different. And as it's standing here and you're getting a close-up, that's one thing I want to show you. If you store your benches vertically, and a lot of us in garage gyms do, the stability of this is way different. Not only when it's standing up, but when it's laying down. But check this out. So these both store vertically. This, if you look, is pretty, I mean, it's not going to fall over on its own, but there is some wobbliness there. When I would move this the same, like, I really have to, as you can see, I really have to go at it to do it. And that's due to a couple of reasons. Number one, the feet, and we'll look at this later, on the 2.0 are much wider. That gives it more stability standing up. It gives it more stability when it's sitting down. Also, the little pad that this rests on is different. On the 2.0, it's attached to the seat pad, and on the 1.0, it's not. And that's another difference. When I do this, nothing's kind of flailing back and forth. When I do this, you can actually hear both seat pads moving back and forth because neither of them is stable. In fact, I can take the bottom one and wiggle that around. So there's a couple of differences that you can see from this angle. Let's move down a little bit and take a look closer at the middle part of these. Okay, let's come back down to the middle and we'll take a look at the differences down here. Now the first difference that's going to jump out at you is the colors. My particular bench on the 2.0 is white and black, but there are several different colors available for these slides. So that gives you the ability to customize it, match it to your gym. Whereas on the original 1.0, this was just black to match the bench. Now this is metallic black, this is metallic black, so the base color of both of these benches is the same. There are some color options available on the Rep website, and I'll put the links down below so that you can take a look at the different color options for the currently available 2.0. I have to be honest, I actually like this better than what they've done over here. So over here, it's just kind of plain. You've got the color here, but I do like the silver stainless steel Rep badging on here. It's a little thing, it's just a personal preference, but I do kind of like this better on this. But overall, here what they've done is instead of doing the bolt-on, they've actually laser cut it into the metal, the support of the seat. So that looks cool too. I just like the color contrast of these. Another difference that you're gonna see while we're down here is we add some knurled handles here. There's knurling in a couple places on the 2.0. It's down here. I didn't show you because I don't have them turned the right way, but I will in a second. The handle up here is also knurled. The handle up here is smooth, and then the handle down here is rubber coated. I like the knurling. I like the knurling because A, it's a better grip, but B, it just looks nicer. So aesthetically, again, a theme that you're noticing is that aesthetically, they've made quite a few improvements to the 2.0 over the 1.0, whether it's the cutouts or whether it's the knurls or whether it's the color contrast pieces that you can get to go along with the bench. Okay, now let's take a look at the front of the benches where the handles are. Now here's where you can see the knurling that I was just talking about. Here you've got a knurled handle. Here you have a very smooth metal handle. With the knurling on here, not only does it look nicer, functionally it makes it a lot easier to carry around, to pick up. It's more secure. I'm real lucky I never dropped this on my toes. I have dropped it a couple times, just being quick in the gym. Other differences that you can see. So on the old one, like I said, I do actually prefer, now here's the bolts I was talking about before, where you can see there's just bolts everywhere. They just bolted a bunch of stuff on. And that's just because it takes a lot more effort and money to design more integrated solutions. So it makes sense that it's this way on the 1.0. I actually like this laser cutout with the Rep, with the stainless steel behind it. I prefer this badging personally. However, I do have a soft spot in my heart. I'm from Colorado, Rep's based in Colorado. Kind of a match right there. I always have an affinity for them just for that reason. I miss looking out the windows and seeing the Rocky Mountains, and not that this is any substitution, but I appreciate the mountain logo. So I dig that. I just don't dig it as much as this. It'd be cooler if there was a piece of stainless behind here or something like that, but again, personal preference. Now, what these two things also serve as is your handle to change the angle on the seat itself. And they have changed a couple of things. So first of all, this handle sticks out further and in my opinion is a little safer. This one, because it's closer, I have pinched myself in here. There's really no way to do that. There's a big space between this. There's not a big space between this. So this is a little safer. This is a little bit easier. For some of you who own this bench, you've probably pinched your hand in there before. So I do appreciate that. Now this one has 1, 2, 3 adjustments. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 adjustments. So you do pick up one more angle on the seat on the 2.0. You'll see why when I show you the rest of the adjustments on this, because this is more adjustable than the 1.0. But as far as the foot of these units go, there's the differences. The other difference you can't really see, this one has 2 small rubber pads under the foot. I'll show you there. So there's 2 pads bolted on here. With this one, it's pretty cool. There's 1 large pad that has some Rep branding underneath it. What that does, and I might as well just point this out now, one of the biggest differences, the stability of this bench far surpasses the stability of this bench. And this isn't an unstable bench, but one of the common knocks on this bench was that there were a few things that kind of rocked back and forth and moved. This one doesn't do that. And the larger support in the front and more of the contact point being rubber is going to contribute to your bench not moving around when you're using it. Let's take a look at another angle. All right, let's come on down to the seat pads where there's a couple of major improvements of the 2.0 over the 1.0. And I want you to remember this isn't a good versus bad comparison. This is a really good versus better comparison. But there's a couple things that are major improvements. So let's start with the seat gap. If you'll notice this one, not only is this seat gap wider, and you'll notice this is much smaller, this really butts up right up to the hinge inside. This one has space. I can actually get my finger between the pad and the hinge. Here there's no space at all. Another big difference is this hinge is just about flush. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch down below the pads, but it's enough to where if you were to sit on this gap, you felt the hinge. This is a solid 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch below the top of the pads. You can sit down right on top of this and not have any issues at all with the hinge. Another difference, and this was a knock on the 5200 version 1.0, if you can see, this is wider than this. It's a little bit crooked. And no matter how much I adjusted or tightened, I couldn't fix that. And when looking online, you'll see a lot of other people, they took pictures of it. I'm not sure if it's the seat that's a little bit crooked or the hinge or what it is, but this was just a slight bit cockeyed. Didn't affect how the bench functioned, but it did kind of bother me. Whereas this one, the tolerances are much better. So this is even all the way across. The hinge is lower, the gap is smaller. That's a big difference if you're not spending the extra money on a zero gap bench. The other couple differences with the pads, this and this are way different. This is much firmer and much more conducive, especially if you lift heavy. It gives you a lot more padding. One of the reasons that your butt would hit this hinge is because of how much this compressed, whereas this doesn't compress near as much. Now, what they've got these covered in. This is covered in what they call their clean grip vinyl. This is the first bench that I've ever owned where I didn't need to actually put a bench wrap or another grip aid up here when I was bench pressing to keep myself from sliding as I dug my shoulders into the bench. It's really, really, really good material. This was good. This was their second version that used to come with even slicker material than this, but I still had to use a bench wrap on this where I don't have to do that on this. Also, this, because it's stickier, I do want to point out, you can probably see it in the video, I did clean both of these pretty well before I shot this video, and this, I know on their website it says it's easy to clean. One of the drawbacks of the 2.0 for me is it tends to get dirty a lot easier. Now I train a bunch of people here in the gym, and after a full day of training, this thing is absolutely filthy, whereas this one, the dirt didn't stick to it near as much. Now, for me, I'll trade the grippiness of this material over it being harder to clean all day long, but I do want to point that out that, you know, you can see, even though I wiped this down, you can still see some dirt and some of the marks from where I wiped it down, whereas on this one, you won't see that. Let's take a look at the side view of these pads. There is a difference there as well. Okay, let's take a look at the end of the benches, at the head of the bench. And the first thing I want to point out, like I said, is the side of the pads. Now, with the 2.0, you've got a cleaner fit and finish here. With the 1.0, you have the same seat design they've had on their benches for quite a long time until they've gone to these 2.0s. This little stuff here liked to fall off. In fact, if you can look right there, it is coming off. I can actually get my finger underneath it. I've had to re-glue this quite a few times. On the 2.0 benches, they've no longer got that problem. This is attached a whole lot better. It's attached with staples, it's sewn on, it's not glued on. It's gonna last a whole lot longer. So the durability, in addition to the grippiness, in addition to the more firmness, the durability of this bench is gonna be better. Now, does this have anything to do at all with how long the bench is gonna last or how well it works? Absolutely not. But it is nice to know that your seat's not gonna fall apart on the new one. When you look at the front here, I wanna show you how, now remember at the beginning of the video when I showed you that this one wobbled and this one didn't? The reason for that is the stand to hold this up wasn't actually attached to the seat. So while this sat on the ground, this was free to move, and that's what made that noise that I made earlier. With these, what they've gone is they've changed two things. Number one, this is actually attached to the top of the pad. So it rests right there, and it keeps the pad from moving and swinging around while you're using the bench. The other thing is, this is coated in UHMW plastic. This is bare metal. This is gonna be a little nicer to your floors. It's going to be less noisy. This one made some funky noises. So that's a big difference. And if you store your bench vertically, the 2.0 definitely a step up over the 1.0. Now, another big, huge thing. Now, I mentioned the stability of these benches is different. The width on the 2.0 of the rear foot is considerably wider than the width of the 1.0. And that makes this thing a whole lot more stable. When you're using it as a flat bench, it makes it more stable. And then I'm going to show you with it inclined. That was an issue with the 1.0 that's not with the 2, and a big part of the stability increase while this is inclined and flat is due to the width of this foot. Now, a couple things that didn't change. The wheels are the same on both of them. The wheels on the rep benches are always nice. You don't have to lift them up real high to move them around the gym. They did go with color matched hardware on these wheels versus the silver on these. Again, just those little nice design touches. The end caps and the feet underneath are the same on both of them. So these stayed the same. One more thing that I want to point out is the AB5200 2.0 does decline. And the way that it does that is this post here. You'll notice this post is fixed. So it's not moving. That stops it flat. With this, you've got a pop pin and you've got a post here. So if I pull this, that now declines. But that's one of the nice things and one of the big differences you notice. Also, this is a nice stainless pop pin. It's not plastic. It's not going to crack. It's not going to come apart. It's very easy to use. The one thing I don't like about this is you have to pull the seat up, hold the seat up, and then adjust this. And there is a 0, -4, -6, -8. So there's 3 positions of decline in addition to flat. So you've got a bunch of adjustability here, but I don't like having to do this to adjust it. It's kind of a pain because it really takes 3 hands. Minor detail, you kind of get used to doing it. And honestly, you're not changing this all that often, but that is something that's kind of a pain that I'm not a huge fan of on this. Right. Let's take a look at one of the biggest knocks on the 5200 1.0. It was the single biggest thing that anybody complained about. There were all kinds of fixes floating around YouTube on how to address this. None of them worked fantastic. I didn't think this was as big of an issue as everybody else did, but it was a big enough issue that a lot of people said something. So let's take a look at it. And that's that when this was inclined, it rocked back and forth. Now, you could tighten the hinge. You could put some extra washers down here in the adjustment piece, and you could get this to be relatively stable. But this isn't necessarily what you want in an adjustable bench, especially if you lift heavy. I want to point out something else. Take a listen. All right. Now, take a listen. This is built so much better. You can tell by how quiet it is. It's kind of like when you got into a BMW or Mercedes for the first time and closed the door and there's that nice solid thunk. You know, I grew up in the 80s and my parents always had American cars, and American cars rattle and shake and fall apart, at least in that time period, from day one. And I remember the first time I ever got in a BMW, it sounded just like this. So it brings back good memories. The other thing that you'll notice, like, it's not moving. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, there's tighter tolerances on the hinge. There's tighter tolerances on the adjustment. There's a wider rear foot. There's more padding on the front foot. But if you shied away from the 1.0 because of that issue, or you have a 1.0 that has that issue and you don't like it, the 5200 is super stable. Now, it's not as stable as the Blackwing, which I have back here. And little tip, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, because I will be doing a comparison in my next video of the 2.0 versus the Blackwing. So if that's another comparison that you're looking for, that's coming up next. So make sure, like I said, so you hit the bell so you don't miss out when I release that video. But between the 1.0 and the 2.0, there is a tremendous upgrade from one to the next. Now, there's also more adjustments on this. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 adjustments, while this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 3 more adjustments on this. Plus, like I said, this declines. Real easy to adjust on the bottom as well. That hasn't changed on either one. All around, really nice improvement on the stability, really nice improvement on the build quality. Now let's come back up and wrap this up. So let's answer the big question. Should you upgrade? If you have a 1.0 and you're looking to upgrade, or maybe you're looking at buying a used 1.0 instead of springing for a new 2.0, which way should you go? Now, I would tell you right now that both are amazing benches. If they hadn't come out with the 2.0, I would still be training on the 1.0, happy as a clam, loving it, not looking to replace it. So if that extra money is important, then definitely pick up a used 1.0 or stick with what you've got. That said, here locally in the Chicagoland area on Facebook Marketplace, you can find 1.0s going for anywhere from $350 to $400 pretty regularly, and that's what they're selling for. That's not what people are asking for them, that's what they're actually selling for. So the price of an upgrade, if you were to sell your original 1.0 and upgrade to a 2.0, you're only gonna spend another $100 to $200 to do that, and in my opinion, if that $100 to $200 is in the budget, it is absolutely worth an upgrade all day long. The number of improvements that they've made are vast, and it's not just stuff that doesn't affect the function. Yes, it looks nicer, it's cool with the color combinations, the color matched hardware, all that kind of stuff. But for me, the better gap, the grippier vinyl, the better quality seat pad, and then really the stability is a notable difference. I'm not as big of a fan as having many adjustments. I'm not changing the adjustments all that much, so 7 versus 10 for me isn't as big of a deal. The bigger deal for me is when it is inclined, this new one isn't moving around, it's not wobbling back and forth, I'm not constantly trying to tighten things. So if you are looking to upgrade, I do think it's worth it. If you're looking between buying a used one and buying a new one, and again, if the money's in the budget, then definitely go with the 2.0. They've got some really cool colors, and they just, I'm so mad about this. They just released the 2.0 in clear grind. And if you haven't seen clear grind, head over to the Rut Fitness website. I'll put a link down in the description below. It is the single most beautiful color that you can get a bench in. It's so nice that I'm considering buying another Blackwing in that color just to have that color. So that color is super sweet, and that color addresses the concerns I had about liking some of the badging and everything on the 1.0 better. But there's a full comparison. If I missed something, or if you have a question on this comparison or not sure about something, please put the comment down below. If you could like and subscribe and all that kind of fun stuff. I hate being your average YouTuber who asks to do that, but I can't tell you how important that is to YouTube channels. It's what allows YouTube to know to send our videos to other people who may not normally see them. Subscribing is huge as well. So if you could do all of that, I would really appreciate it. But that's it for this one. And until next time, when I'm going to compare the 2.0 versus the Blackwing, which I'm going to film in just a second, I'm Tim from GymCrafter.